Thank you. Hello. Welcome today. Hopefully you can hear us now. I know we had some audio difficulty at the beginning, but I believe we've got that fixed. So Joe, if we could pull up the PowerPoint, that'd be great. Thanks for taking the time with us, and apologize if we have some technical difficulty linking in our friend Andre from the Netherlands. So I want to give a little bit of background on why we're here and why we wanted to kind of talk about this topic. Caldwell VanRiper has a lot of local, national, and global clients, and we've been very fortunate that we have a lot of manufacturers in the state of Indiana that export their goods around the world, and we have a few clients today that we help deliver their products and services around the world. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about kind of how you can market globally without really ever leaving Indianapolis. There are a lot of good resources here. So we can advance the slide to our agenda, kind of give you an overview of our topics today. We're going to talk about kind of what the network is that Andre and I are working and why we were selected to do this webinar. We'll give a brief overview of kind of what you need to do beyond translating. Sometimes you have to go beyond the written word to really connect and be relevant locally around the world. We'll talk about that. And we'll also talk about global reach from Indy, what you can do from your office here to connect with people around the world. And then we'll talk about content. And content has become the #1 tool for attracting business and on a global scale. It doesn't really matter now from a social media standpoint where you are. If you create great content, people will find you. And then we'll talk about some of the best practices for training if you have to attend a show overseas with your products and services, and then give you a brief overview of work we do with AMIN Transmission with Andre and his team outside the United States. So maybe we'll begin and dive in a little bit about CVR. We're the oldest agency in Indianapolis and in Indiana, and we have a few clients, including AMIN Transmission, where we do global marketing today, and we've done so for Roche and a few other clients in the past, Knauf Insulation. And so we have a history or experience of doing that, and we have been successful sometimes, and other times we have found the pitfalls that we will alert you to today and talk about that. So that's a little bit about CVR. Let me introduce my friend Andre van der Meer from Campania in the Netherlands, and we'll talk about a network of agencies we're in called AMIN, which is an advertising and marketing network of about 50 agencies around the world. So if you'll advance that slide, Joe. AMIN is got 50 agencies in 30 different countries, and it's a resource that we can help brands be relevant all around the world, from the simplest of translation to actually having boots on the ground to meet with customers and do research and really take their brand to different cultures around the world. So we're part of a network. We work together on AMIN Transmission. We've worked together on other brands. And we're really able to accomplish a lot with this network. The next slide shows kind of some of the brands that utilize the network, and so they're brands you've heard of, and AMIN Transmission as being the biggest one and the one based here in Indianapolis. It gives us a sense of who's using the network and why they use us. We're independent agencies, so we don't have a lot of overhead, and we can really be pretty nimble and work for them on the ground wherever they're products and services are sold. So if you flip the slide, you'll see some of those brands in the AMIN network, and you can see, recognize some of those, a lot of manufacturers. And I'd like to now introduce Andre, if we can hold his video up and go to the next slide. And Andre, if you could tell us a little bit about Campania and marketing in Europe, that'd be great. So we'll see. We'll cross our fingers technically and see if it works. There's his slide. And if we can pull him up as a presenter, we'll see if that works. Yeah. Andre, can you hear us? Yep, we can't hear him. So I can give a brief overview of what Campania is. It's an agency like CVR with a similar amount of people. And Andre is the president of AMIN Europe. And so many brands in Europe cross-market with each other, and he leads that charge for AMIN. And they've got multiple brands that do that. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the perspective of Europe. When we export from the US, we think of Europe as one place. And if you flip the slide there, Joe, Europe looks like one place on a map, but really, if you take a look at Europe, if you flip the slide, Europe is a vastly different place with a lot of different countries and a lot of different cultures. And when you're in Europe and you're a European, while they are connected financially and logistically and not far away, they are very, very different cultures. And so marketing in France is very different than marketing in Europe. And there are a lot of sort of pitfalls in terms of assuming that Europe is all the same or is one, because even though it is financially, there are very different cultures. And if you flip the slide, there's 750 different million people in Europe, and all very different with different sort of cultures and ways of doing business. And I think understanding those nuances between countries and all those people is pretty critical about marketing your brand and being successful outside the United States. So that's a little bit of background on sort of AMIN and Campania, and if we can get Andre to join for Q&A, that would be great. I know he's on because we just talked to him before we started, so we'll try to get connected as we move forward here. So if you advance the slide, let's really talk about kind of beyond translation. So what's the first step you do when you want to market outside the United States? And translation is, it's in its simplest form, a way to be relevant with your marketing. And so what we like to say is that sometimes you have to go beyond translation. There are great resources here in Indianapolis for that, and even at the chamber we have several members like Luna that do a great job translating and making it culturally relevant to the countries you're serving. But sometimes you have to go beyond that to make sure you have the right translation. That sometimes you have to really make it culturally relevant. And I mean, sometimes we use colloquialisms in our headlines and our copy that just doesn't translate correctly. And also when you're in an industry that has industry-specific jargon, that doesn't always translate correctly. So we would advise our clients, and we do so today, that if you have a broker or a salesperson or even a manufacturer on the ground in another country, we would recommend, even if you translate here in Indianapolis, that you have someone else in the country review that translation just to make sure it's accurate. It might be textbook accurate, but you want to make sure it's relevant to the industry that you're providing information for, because it can quickly derail you, and you'll be less credible if it's not relevant to that culture. The other thing we would recommend is that sometimes you have to look beyond the written word to be translated. And I'll give you an example. If you flip this slide, we do work for Allison Transmission. They sell automatic transmissions for medium and heavy-duty trucks. And when we developed some of the first pieces for their corporate brochure, we had photography here in the U.S., and this is an example of it. We couldn't just translate the copy because ultimately trucks look different in different countries. They have different manufacturers from Europe or from Asia or Africa. And if we just had translated the copy, people in certain countries would look at that and not believe that Allison is credible in the European market, because we would be showing U.S. trucks in a European market. So ultimately, we had to customize the photography and the people we're showing, the drivers. Those are small things. They seem small, but ultimately, your customer wants to know that this U.S. brand is understands their market and understands their customers. And so sometimes you have to go beyond translation. Our network works with Caterpillar, and they've even said Caterpillar wants to do photography in different countries because the dirt looks different. So they literally are doing photography to show different terrains and different types of soil, because the soil in Africa is not the same as the soil in Russia. So something to consider if you, again, are wanting to be as relevant as you can be in different countries. On the next slide, we want to talk about kind of how you can market globally from your home in Indianapolis without really having to travel. And really, the first is getting your brand found. And Google probably is the best place to do it, the cheapest place to do it. And if you have seen the Google AdWords components, you can set your region to be global in nature. It can get complicated because you can serve up ads in different languages. And Google will do the translation for you if you want them to. And if you've ever used Google Translate, it's not always accurate. So you want to create ads and keywords in different languages to serve up around the globe. We've done that for some of our clients, been very successful to drive traffic to US websites. That's a great way to get your brand out there. The second is LinkedIn. Obviously, it's a great tool for business. We recommend that our clients join groups outside the United States or start groups outside the United States and attract members to have conversations rather than just advertising, but have conversations about solutions and products, and that seems to work very well. The next thing we recommend is making sure that on your current website in the US that you build a landing page in different languages, or at least have SEO tags that are relevant for people searching outside the United States. Now, some industries do business in English around the globe, but some do not. And so if you're a new product and you want to get relevant in a specific country or language, we'd recommend that you at least have a page or a landing page on your site that is your ads or your materials are driving them to a specific page that's in their own language. That also can help you get found when someone's doing a search in their own language, because whether you believe it or not, most people are searching in their own native language on Google and not in English. Depends on the country, of course, but people search their own in their own language. The other thing is to consider whether you want to add a landing page to your web page here in the US or have a different URL, because every country has a different URL code, and this example is IU has a page for Chinese students and alumni at china.iu.edu. They could have easily set up a website and hosted and a page at the China URL to be found more quickly if someone was searching there. So it's just one quick example. And then the next thing we recommend from sort of global reach is purchasing digital ads. You can buy ads with publishers outside the U.S. We've done that for clients. So if I'm in health science and I want to be considered in cancer diagnostics in Germany, going to a publication in Germany and placing my ads there, even if they're in English, is a great way to be, for a new brand to be credible in another country. And so we recommend that. It's, again, a cheap, easy thing to do, and you don't have to leave your office in the United States to do any of that kind of stuff. And all those things you should be able to do on your own pretty simply. So the next topic here to talk about just real quickly is Google. I want everyone to be aware that Google does dominate the world, except for two regions of the world, Russia and China. And those are very big markets for certain industries. So in China, the Google is Baidu, and in Russia it's Yandex. And Google has about a 3% or 5% market share in China. So if you're trying to get your brand out there, Google will not be the vehicle you could use. And that's because they've had a little dispute in terms of privacy and all that kind of stuff. And so if you're marketing in those two big countries, China or Russia, you have to take a different strategy, probably more in depth than we want to get here. But for the rest of the world, Google has a 75% market share, and in some countries, 100% market share. So it's a great tool for most of the world. Just want to caution you, it's not necessarily the right tool for China in particular. So let's talk about sort of the next topic here to make sure we stay on time is about content, and it's around global content. And the way to get your brand found is to create content in today's world that is unique and different. And we tell our clients that great content can be found anywhere, and with social media there are no borders, and with the internet, so that might be one of the best ways you can market your company, is to create some content that can be found. And we feel that content should be emotional and it should be unexpected. And really, if you think about the singular benefit of your product and the consumer end, even if you're in a B2B space, what's the pure benefit of your product, and focus on that benefit. That's more likely to get content that will be shared around the globe. And then obviously tag your content appropriately so it can be found. But if you're in a manufacturing and you make a widget, and that widget goes into a machine that ultimately makes someone's life better, focus on those kind of emotional moments, and it might be a great way to get found. And we have two examples here of content that was created, it's been shared globally but a little bit unique, and it'll give you a sense of what we're talking about. So if you flip the slide here, we're going to play a little video. We have to change up the video here, so bear with it. We'll play this video and we'll talk about that. And this is for a bank in the Netherlands who has a mortgage product they wanted to get better known. And so they said, who is interested in a mortgage product? That's someone selling a house. So let's create a video about the best way to sell a house, and this video will speak for itself.
The process of buying a home can be a figurative roller coaster, but for clients considering a 5-bedroom home in the Netherlands, it's a literal one as well. I'm Jen Markham on Buzz60. In the competitive European real estate market, brokers are trying to figure out ways to liven up stagnant listings. So after one house in Ermelo, the Netherlands, languished on the market for 6 months without a sale, broker Verden Wonen actually built a roller coaster in the 2-story home to give buyers a memorable and thrilling home tour. The ride rockets through the garage, up the basement stairs, through the living areas, all the while a sound system broadcasts the home's key features. In a ride that's part County Fair kiddie coaster and part Disney's Carousel of Progress. It's fun, unique, and totally unforgettable, but if a buyer wants a closer look, there's all this roller coaster stuff in the way. Aren't you supposed to declutter before you list? I kind of want to show this to my broker and go, oh, so I had to put my cat toys and Star Wars hand puppet collection in storage, but a 2-story wooden roller coaster is okay. Buzz60. Now you know.
Okay, so I don't know if you can see that. I have a copy of the webinar up, and the video was jumping for me, so I'll kind of give you a little bit of background, but you might have seen some snippets there. But the whole idea was to get more people to come to our house. Let's make this house incredible, and so they built a roller coaster in a house to get people to come see this house that was for sale. The ultimate goal is that they had thousands of people come to see that house, and by the way, they actually never sold the house. Who wants to buy a house with a roller coaster in it? But what they did have is over 1 million people view this video in Europe, then eventually the US, but 1 million within Europe, within their marketplace, to understand the products that this bank is serving. So again, it's an example of trying to be unique and create a unique way to show your product and services. And it's a great way to bust through borders and get people excited about the products and services that you want to market. So we'll make sure we post these links after the webinar, so you can click through and watch these videos on YouTube as well. They're all out there on YouTube. So the next video, we'll play that. Hopefully it'll work for you as well. This is an example of somebody who's exporting, and there's a company that makes a seafood delicacy in Finland. And to get people to understand this this sort of old tradition of this food, they created a contest that allowed people to get a free sample shipped to them if they would record them opening and tasting this Finnish delicacy. And it's canned fish. So I don't know if you've ever had canned fish, but it's not for everybody. And the interesting thing, it says on the can, it says it must be opened underwater. And that helps dissipate the smell when you open the can. But of course, the Finns didn't share that with everybody. And that was the fun of doing these videos. So if you have a product or service you want to have people try, this might be interesting. So we'll play the video, and if by chance you can't hear it, you can see the link after the presentation. So let's take a look.
Hello, live week. I got this package from Finland, from Blue 87. Thank you. We're about to open it, and I got a spoon and some blue chips, and we're gonna try to eat it. See what he sent us from Finland. Austrians serve strumming. They do that extension cord. And we got electrical panel on it. Alright, it's sealed, so we didn't mess with it. Best before January 14th.
Before a year?
January 14th.
Oh, okay. So,
So we're still good. It's still from whatever the fuck.
If you're having trouble seeing the video, you can also Google it. The next show up and you'll see it. It's pretty strong over something,
I'm quitting. Ah, fool.
so that's every time.
Y'all flip me little wieners. Want to eat some KK? What's the night? About that shit. Where y'all going? Wait. Yeah, you gotta make sure it ain't got no bones. You don't crunch into a bone.
Go, Matt. You do it.
Go ahead, Matt.
Try it.
Oh, fuck that. You ain't got no salt, hot sauce or anything?
Sorry
You
about
gotta
that.
do this raw.
That's bleach it. Yep.
So we deleted all of it.
Oh.
So, I mean, you get a sense of what this is, and hopefully your products and services don't, smell as bad as smear some. But the whole idea is that the premise is to get someone to try your product, right? And so, can you create a video about someone trying your product, or for the first time, or figuring out how to assemble it? There's lots of ideas, but the whole idea is, can you export and ship out your product or services and see if you can't get record someone's reaction to either the product itself or the value or the benefit of your product. So it's just a fun example. If you want to Google that and you couldn't see all of it, I think that video is about 6 minutes long, so we cut out some of the juicier parts. But you get a sense of do something unique and unexpected, and people will find your product. The next thing we want to talk about is really trade show best practices. And really, obviously, if you're a large company, you're probably hiring somebody outside the United States to do your stand, as they call it, a trade show booth outside the U.S., which is relatively expensive, but the right way to go if you're doing presentations in multiple countries. But I wanted to talk about the manufacturers who have sort of smaller presentations. This picture is a presentation of Allison Transmission. We help design messaging and booths around the world, and Campania helped develop these videos and stands and that kind of stuff. But let's talk about what most companies do at trade shows. And if you're a new company exporting your products out of Indiana, and let's say you have just a 10-foot table, tablecloth, and you're going to Germany or Finland or China to get your goods and services out there in the market for the first time, let's just kind of talk about some of the basics that you need to be aware of. The first thing is if you have to ship items to your trade show, you've probably heard about this, but customs can be a nightmare, even if you're shipping paper goods, printed materials. So we recommend a minimum of 2 weeks to allow for customs just to be held, and you'll have to answer questions. But sometimes we really try to get 4 weeks for shipping to a trade show just because of the unknown for customs. The only other way to avoid that is to carry it yourself on the plane, and that can also be kind of a nightmare. I know you might have a table or a display in a rolling case, and the last thing you want to do is add 3 more boxes of giveaways or anything else. So please keep in mind that it takes a long time to set up a trade show in other locations. That's pretty key. The other thing is really optimizing your booth for web users. Mobile use outside the United States is off the charts, and so we highly recommend that you are prepared to share information and take information on a mobile device. So if you're going to attend a show, you want to have as much of the data packages as you can, because it's a great way to capture customer information and to share information on the trade show floor. Everyone at a show outside the U.S. and now almost inside the U.S. has a computer in their hand, and that's the primary way you're going to pass information to your contacts. And so people, when they leave the U.S., they don't realize that they haven't signed up for the data plan, or they max it out too quickly on the first day of the show. So we highly recommend that you either have Wi-Fi access at the show and you have to pay for it, and have the right data plans to be able to do that. You also can do text for info, like create short codes that you could use, and those work internationally. That's a great way to get people to sign up for your information at shows. The other thing that people forget, and if you're new at this, you wouldn't know, but most people outside the U.S. use a different format for printing. It's not 8.5 by 11. It's the A4 size. It's skinnier and taller than what we use. And so racks that you would rent at shows, all those kinds of things are in the A4 format. And printers, if you print your materials over there, would print it in an A4 format. So it has to be reformatted before you send it there to get printed. So sometimes we've done that. We've used other printers outside the U.S., so we don't have to worry about customs, but they have to be in the right format for printers over there to utilize. So it's a small thing, but we're giving you examples of where clients of ours have not done the right thing, and they get there and they're surprised. And so it's a great way to take out surprises if you know that. Then the other thing is about giveaways. We've had clients who attended a show and they had maybe 200 of an item or a brochure, and they thought that would be plenty. And the show was in Germany, but there were a lot of Asian attendees. And there are certain cultures who will attend a show with a bag, and they go to every booth and take a piece of material from every booth. They may not even be your customers, but if you have materials out, they'll be gone in 2 hours. So we strongly recommend that you have materials that you can put out for the showgoers to take, and then you keep more expensive materials behind the table or for specific conversations. Again, it seems like a small thing, but we've had clients who had their tables raided in the first few hours of the show, and they've got 2 days left and they have no materials left. So be prepared that trade shows in the U.S. are not the same as trade shows outside the U.S. because of certain cultures, and so make sure you have enough of materials to give away for a particular audience or a particular country, and just give that some thought. And I think the next couple of slides we want to talk about Allison real briefly, and then we'll get to Q&A. So Andre and I work for Allison Transmission and many other agencies around the world, and so we were hired to help them with the global expansion of their brand. They're a very strong brand in the United States, very high market share, but in certain countries outside of Western Europe, they don't have high market share. And so their brand is competing with German brands and other brands around the world, and so they really had to have a different point of view. And they recognize that here in the U.S. So they hired CDR and Campania in the Netherlands, where they have a European office, to really help shape their brand and make it more global. Sometimes people think they have a global brand if they make it the same around the world. And really, we contend that it should be consistent around the world, but sometimes it can't be the same. We talked to you about, trucks and people are different in different countries. So sometimes you really have to make it locally relevant. It has to be consistent and the same brand values and maybe the same brand, look and feel, but it can't be exactly the same. And Allison experienced that because their brand was seen by Europeans and others as being too American in its design and its focus. And so they recognize that, and we've helped them take their brand to a new level. So we started with a brand audit, and we then did interviews around the world with their customers and their employees to understand the perceptions of their brand in different countries. And then we developed a new brand campaign that was more cohesive and more relevant around the world by focusing on their core benefit, which was true in every country. Allison makes an unbelievably strong quality product, and that quality was well known in every country. We just had to make sure that we made it relevant in the right language with the right OEMs and trucks in each country. So that was the focus. We were executing that now. I think there's a slide on it of examples, and certainly you can see what they do on their website. If you come to the Allison website, depending on the country you come into, it changes the language right away, which is a pretty complicated and time-consuming way to do that. But it's very relevant to those people around the world when they come into Allison, that all the pages are in their own language, and it really helps their brand. But for a small brand, that might be too cumbersome and too hard to do. So you could at least do landing pages in a certain language, and that's a great way to go. So really, hopefully that gives you a sense of what you can do as a brand and some of those first steps that you can do to market your brand outside of Indiana. And we know there's huge opportunity and great companies here, and we're excited to see more companies export outside the U.S. and outside of Indiana and become successful. So I think we'll open it up to Q&A here, I put our email addresses in the presentation as well. So if anybody has questions after the webinar, feel free to ask those, and Andre can answer those questions as well as I can. And we'll see, can we get him on the phone as well? We'll see if he can join in on the audio portion at least. So I can see Andre is still on, so I apologize to Andre from here for not being able to connect to him, but I can tell he's still on. Can you make him a presenter by chance? Okay. We'll see if we can get him. Ah, there he is. We'll see. Hello, Andre.
I'm there, and Hi, do you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Me? Do you hear me?
Finally. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry about that.
I'm there.
Andre, do you want to
Thank
say
you.
a few words? I know I probably butchered your slides about Europe, but I think your perspective would be unique for the people in the webinar.
Yeah, it's thank you for the presentation. Start with that, and thank you all for listening or watching this webinar. I think the most important thing, what you said already, is that Europe is 51 countries and 51 cultures and 750 million people. And when the US, you all speak the same language, you have more or less the same culture, more or less the same habits, and here we are really in 51 different countries. And that's difficult. Different languages, different cultures, different people, different climates, different shows, different formats, etc., etc. I saw one question coming down from Emily Cage about show partners that are good. I don't know if you mean with local in the US or local abroad in other countries, because these are the things that we have to find out, and that's why we are using the network just to get more information what's happening in different countries.
Yeah, I see that question being asked twice. How do you vet partners? And Andre, maybe there's a good source in Europe for identifying good printers and good trade show people. I know we have a network, so we know who's good. We've got that experience, but how would somebody outside the network kind of find a good partner in Europe?
I think that's hard. And it's especially hard with trade shows, because when something is wrong on your booth, they're not going to postpone the show for you. It's there, you have to work with it and deal with that. So what we do in Europe, or we do the coordination ourselves, and we know the builders, or work with international partners, agencies who coordinate it. There's not registration or something of trade show partners, builders to choose of.
Yeah, in Indianapolis, there's a trade show partner called Exhibit House, and they do work for Indiana companies around the globe. And we've used them for a few of our clients, and they've been a great resource. When they can't, when they have to build a booth outside the U.S., they have the right partners in different countries to be able to do that, or they take the team from Indianapolis. So there are good partners here in Indianapolis, and if you want to look those guys up, I think they would provide even other partners like printers, and because they do work for and have done work for Firestone and Roche and a few other really, they have a lot of experience outside the U.S. and there's probably some good resources right here in Indiana that you could vet outside experts. And I assume they're a member of the chamber, right? Maybe.
Thank you.
Okay, so another question for Emily: is it necessary to translate your website? Andre, I'll let you answer after me, but I'll say it first. It depends on what level of connection you want with your customers. A lot of industries can do business globally in English, but there are certain regions of the world who won't do business in English. And so it depends on where you're marketing and what the industry is. And so, like I said, if you can't afford to do your entire website, maybe make a landing page in a specific language. But ultimately, if they're going to do business, if they're not going to do business in English, and you're in that kind of part of the world, you will have to translate some of your materials if it's not your website. Andre, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely right. In Europe, there are countries, and outside Europe, there are even more that don't speak English. They won't accept it. In France, everyone has to speak English, but they just simply refuse it, most of them. So they don't do business with only English-oriented companies. Of course, Spanish is huge all over the world, so that's very important. In China, you have to work in Chinese. So that's for just the acceptance of your client. The other thing is, for Google, you have to work in the native language, because you mentioned it already earlier in your presentation, Kevin. People look for in search in their own language and not in English.
Yeah, and you can rely on Google to translate some of your work, but as if you've ever used Google Translate on your own site or another site, it's about 75% correct and 25% not. So it's very difficult to rely on them to translate your site. But you can allow your site to be translated by Google, and there are things you can do to your site to allow for it to happen even better. But I think it just depends on the market you're going to be in, or the country, and the industry that you're in, whether you need to translate your website. Now, we have clients who operate in Canada, and by law, their materials and website have to be in French Canadian. So even in Canada, there's a requirement for parts of Canada to have that. So for us, we did that for Knauf Insulation. They had to be in French Canadian, and any catalogs of materials were required by law to be in their language. So it just depends on the region you're in. So any other questions from our group of listeners? I don't see any. I think that's it. So
Great.
okay, I'm going to turn it back over to the chamber, and I'll slide out.
And I'll slide in. Thanks everybody for taking time out of your lunch hour to listen to our webinar today. And thank you mostly to Kevin and Andre for giving us a little bit of expertise today on global marketing communications. We will have this webinar archived on our webinar portal at indychamber.com/globalindy. Feel free to share this information with your contacts. Information about our future webinars as part of this series will be emailed to you as part of our follow-up communications. For a more in-depth conversation about tools and information about going global as a company, please mark your calendars for our upcoming World Trade Day, Tuesday, May 24th, which is a one-day event focused on helping you grow your business and through the expertise through our local contacts, and also we'll have some national folks in as well to help us figure out how to navigate new markets. For more information, you can access that at indychamber.com/events. And before we depart today, I do want to call out a new initiative that we've partnered with Indiana InternNet for their great programs that they have to help connect students in our state with great internships at companies. And we've thrown up a slide here to direct you to the website. As you think about going global, consider taking on interns and really helping to help you do some additional research on exporting. And there's IndianaIntern.net is a really great resource for connecting great interns and even some programs to help pay for those interns. I encourage you to access that there as well. Without further ado, I think we will depart from you, and thank you again for your time today.